Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to a video that's gonna be very much focused on Burgeon. Hi. I hope you're all having a great day today. I'm here to make it worse. We're gonna talk about Burgeon, why Burgeon sucks, and how you can make it not suck, basically. I've already addressed some of the things I'm gonna talk about in previous videos. I've talked about some of the Burgeon interactions in my Dendro reaction guide, which you should check out. My part 3 of my elemental reaction guide that focuses on Dendro reaction. You should check that out if you haven't already. But I kind of want to address it like more specifically for Burgeon, just have a standalone video based on it, where I can like showcase some of the interactions and talk about some of the stuff. So the basic premise with Burgeon is that Hydro and Dendro creates a seed, and then hitting that seed with Pyro makes it explode and deals some Dendro damage. If you actually look at the damage that Burgeon does, here he had his super armor thing, a very large amount of resistances that he gets while he's waking up. But if I wait until he's woken up, see, I'm getting 24k, and that's before I proc my set bonus. On a fully M character, when you get the resistance shred from the Deepwood Memories set, and you get a decent high amount of EM, you can get your Burgeons to deal upwards of like 30 to potentially even up to 35k if you end up playing like Zhongli for the resistance shred, or if you end up going for weapons that give you EM buffs like the elegy for the end and things like that. But generally, right, you're hovering around 30k for your Burgeon damage. Now, if you can trigger a lot of Burgeons, that can be a fuck ton of damage, obviously. And Burgeon is AoE, which means it's AoE damage. And another thing that can actually happen is you can actually trigger 2 seeds at once, right? There's 2 seeds here. And if I hit both seeds at the same time, well, fuck. Right, you can hit both at the same time, and they both deal the damage. But yeah, so, if you get 2 at the same time, you can trigger 2 Burgeons. But that also means that if you're in AoE, you're hitting 2 enemies with your Hydro and Dendro, you can trigger 2 seeds from the fact that you're hitting 2 enemies, and that effectively means that when you're against multiple enemies, you can actually get more Burgeon procs, which is very nice. So you might be thinking, okay, well, Zajev, those are all good things. So what's the problem with Burgeon? Well, the problem with Burgeon is that if you accidentally fuck up your order, or even not accidentally, sometimes it's not possible to get the perfect order, you'll trigger Burning. And Burning removes the Dendro. And because right now, we're currently gated by the speed of our Dendro application, then removing that Dendro is really bad. You manage to get a seed because you apply it twice, but if you end up, for example, not applying it twice, if you only apply it once, if you only apply Hydro once, you get a Evade, but you don't get a Bloom. The way that the Bloom interaction works is if you apply Dendro on Hydro, so Hydro first, and then Dendro, you'll remove all of your aura, and you'll get 1 seed. But if you do it the other way around, you do Dendro into Hydro instead, you still have some Dendro aura, so you can potentially get 2 seeds instead of 1. And as you can see, I managed to generate 2 seeds here. Generally, you want to have Dendro and then Hydro, rather than Hydro and then Dendro. But if you do that, Dendro and then Hydro, and then you accidentally apply Pyro, it's going to burn off the rest of your aura, and you're only going to get 1 Bloom instead of the 2. So effectively, what ends up happening is you have 2 options. Either you go for slow Hydro, keep a Dendro aura, but every time you trigger Burning, it's going to make you lose Blooms. Or you go for fast Hydro, and you end up with Dendro being the trigger, and like we said, right, when you apply Dendro onto Hydro, it removes all of it and you only get 1 Bloom, right? Which isn't what you want. You'd rather get more than 1. Now, this is not a problem that Hyper Bloom has, because, well, sure, you still get the Hydro into Dendro being only 1 seed. There is another interaction with Electro that when you're applying Dendro and Electro Charge, I mean, you already know this if you've been watching my previous videos, but if you apply Dendro and Electro Charge instead of Hydro, you trigger Quicken, and that Quicken can be used to create another seed. So you end up with 2 seeds still. So what can you do about that problem that Burgeon has? That if you have fast Hydro, you don't generate that many seeds, and if you have fast Dendro, you'll trigger Burning, and Burning will basically fuck you over. Well, there is actually a way to remedy that. And that way is to have fast Hydro with Electro, because like I said, when you apply Dendro and Electro Charge, you get Quicken, And that quicken can get you another seed. So if you add an Electro unit to your Burgeon team, and if it's an Electro unit that won't target the seeds too often, then you can actually be using the Electro aura on the enemy to be generating more seeds. But then on top of that, what ends up happening, if you actually play it out, is because you have fast Hydro, the enemy will very often have Hydro, and if you have fast Electro, they'll very often have both. But what happens when you apply Pyro onto both? Well, you get Vaporize and you get Overloaded. Now the Vaporize won't do that much, but the Overloaded will do a lot of damage. You're gonna get Overloads. Right, and as you can see, if you ended up going for something like this, you still get a bunch of Burgeon, and as you can see from the aura, we're basically always on Electro and Hydro aura, and then every once in a while we go to Dendro aura for like a fraction of a second, but because our Hydro application is so fast, we basically remove it instantly. So we end up with Dendro not really staying on the enemy, so you don't trigger burning very often, and even when you do, because your Hydro application is so fast, you can remove the burning relatively quickly. But then on top of that, you have Electro application, and Electro application can also be used to remove burning. So if I do this, into this, into this, I can actually remove my burning and get a Dendro aura that then transforms into Quicken aura with my further Electro application. So basically, you can be using an Electro unit to fix the problems with Burgeon. Right, I've already talked about most of this in the Razor video, but it is important to understand the pitfalls with Burgeon, right? It's that when you try to Burgeon normally, you just run into those problems, right? If you go for fast Dendro, slow Hydro, I guess I can use Xingqiu without his burst and just use his orbital swords. And then the problem you run into is, where the fuck are your Burgeons? You're triggering Vaporize, and that's removing the burning, but you're not actually getting any fucking Burgeons. And then if you do go for fast Hydro application, then you run into the issue that your Dendro stuff is just not generating that many seeds. We'll start again. This time I'll use his burst. And you are getting some seeds, right? But I'm sure you can see that we're just not getting that many. It is functional. It is something that can work if your Hydro's really, really fast like Xingqiu is. But because our current Dendro units are not particularly strong, right? You end up playing a team like this. You're playing two units that don't really do much damage. My Collei's level 50, so don't like look at her damage here and be like, wow, she doesn't do that much. She doesn't do that much, but she does do more than what she's doing right now on my account. And then if you were to go for a second Hydro unit and only use one Dendro, you can see that the issue here is just we are not generating a lot of seeds. We're doing a decent amount of damage because we're playing double Hydro, and double Hydro is really good. But we get a total of what, like 8, 9 seeds at most? It works. It's nothing crazy. And for a double Hydro team, that was not a good performance. I know that it's like hard to put into context because obviously it's gonna perform well if you put fucking Xingqiu and Yelan on your team. But keep in mind, right? Burgeon doesn't do Pyro damage, so the fact that this guy's Pyro doesn't reduce its damage, whereas this team has like a pretty large amount of Pyro damage. And as you can see, fuck, I didn't want to kill him. And as you can see, it's clearing like significantly faster. Right, so the bar for teams that use double Hydro is higher because you're using two units that are focused on single target damage. And if you compare that to the performance of the Toma team, then you know, not insane. Basically, the point is the double Hydro core is really strong, and for a double Hydro team, this isn't that good.
Have a special place in my heart.
Anyways, point being, if you're gonna be playing double Hydro team and it's not performing that well in single target, bro. So, the solution is this. These are generally going to be the best Burgeon teams with the current Dendro units we have. You'll be able to make functional Burgeon teams that don't use Electro, but as a general rule, using Electro will make your Burgeon teams a lot better. Now, obviously, this is a team that doesn't have a healer. I'm basically relying only on Xingqiu's like self heal. But yeah, so I'm not running a healer. If you would like to run a healer, you can use something like Kokomi instead. It is obviously a team that's basically focused on sustained damage and not front-loaded, but it is a team that performs pretty well. Obviously, it's relatively single-target focused, so if you end up in AoE situations, you'll still do decent damage because Burgeon is AoE and Overload is AoE, but you might want to consider replacing Xingqiu for an AoE Hydro applicator like Ayato. However, if you end up doing that, then you won't have any healing at all. Xingqiu's healing isn't very large, but it's still healing, so it's gonna be harder to play if you end up using Ayato. But we have swords that give you healing. There's the Black Sword and the Aquila Favonia that give you healing. Let's start by showing the quote-unquote single-target version of the team. Okay. And as you can see, right, we're still getting, you know, pretty decent performance here. Personally, I like the Xingqiu version more even against AoE. Xingqiu is just really good and he feels very comfy to play. But if we go to Ayato, make sure he's on the right stuff. But yeah, as you can see, right, Ayato works very well too. Yelan can work too. Mona, Kokomi can work. Child can work, but I don't like him as much because of his like uptime restrictions. Here's the thing. Obviously, Thoma's not the only unit that can apply off-field Pyro. The thing with Xiangling is she applies it so quickly that you'll very often find yourself losing seeds because you trigger burning. I can show it. And also, her energy requirements are higher than Thoma's if you have Thoma's Constellation 4, I believe, is the one that gives him flat energy. The thing is, because you want to be building full EM, you just don't actually gain much from using a unit like Xiangling instead of Thoma. Well, you are actually potentially going to be losing some blooms. And as you can see, right, like, we're not actually doing as much. We're actually struggling more with Xiangling than we are with Thoma. And then on top of that, Thoma's shield is actually somewhat helpful for this, for the Burgeon self-damage. Ah, fuck. Well, one of them didn't do the thing. hopefully you get the idea. You don't actually gain much from channeling, but you do end up losing some Burgeons. So there's just no point to it. Part of the reason why the Toma team cleared faster is because my channeling's level 80. They can both work, but there's a lot of things that make the Toma version just overall slightly better, including the shield and the fact that you don't trigger burning as often. You can also be using a unit like Xinyan, for example, but Xinyan stops applying off-field Pyro when you lose your shield, and Burgeon deals self-damage, so you will lose your shield no matter what. And so Xinyan doesn't work very well. Using on-field Pyro units can be possible, but it will mean that obviously you're not getting as many Burgeon procs, because during your setups, you'll be triggering Cs that you can't hit until you swap into your Pyro unit, and it prevents you from swapping out and refreshing your other buffs, refreshing your Oz. It is something you can do, it just won't be that great. I can show it with Futao, I guess. I don't want to change her build. I'll just show you, like, just look at the proc rate for your stuff. Fuck. We have the same problem where we apply a lot of Pyro. We don't actually get that many Burgeon procs. But then we also have the problem that, like, we kind of have shit uptime. Look at all these Cs that we can't Burgeon because we had to swap out. Obviously, we're still performing somewhat well because, I mean, my Hu-Tao is very well built. But then on top of that, you run into the issue that you're playing an on-field unit that you can't really swap out during their uptime without a healer and with self-damage. If there is one on-field unit that can actually potentially work for Burgeon things, it is going to be Bennett. In my experience, it hasn't worked well at all. I mean, no, it hasn't worked that well, but it is important to remember that I have C6 on my Bennett, and with the additional Pyro application, we run into the issue that I talked about earlier. But if I didn't have C6, I would likely not be running into as many issues with this. So I would expect, like, Thundering Fury Bennett to be a potential thing you can do. I probably should have tested it on an account that doesn't have C6 before doing this video, but I'm lazy, so... It still works fine because, well, obviously you're playing Bennett, Fischl, and Xingqiu. It would not surprise me if this was better without Bennett C6, though. But yeah, this is a team that's also pretty good. I personally don't like it that much because A, you're kind of forcing yourself into the Bennett circle. B, I would generally rather be playing the Razor version of the team if you end up playing it with Bennett, partly because I have C6. But honestly, it is a good team. It's just the Toma version lets you have Bennett on the other side, which is obviously something you like. But yeah, as like a bit of a conclusion to the Burgeon stuff, it is possible to run without an Electro unit. But generally, not running an Electro unit is just gonna fuck over your damage more than it helps it. And so it's generally not gonna be what you want to be doing. It's an option, it's something you can do, but you'll generally just be able to find better options with Electro units if you have them available. So, in general, if you want to be playing Burgeon teams, because I know, right? I know that people like playing with the new reactions, but I've also seen a lot of disappointment with Burgeon, right? I've seen a lot of people being like, well, I'm trying to play Burgeon teams, and like, they're fine for Overworld, but I try them in Abyss and I just can't clear. And I can understand, right? Like, the traditional Burgeon teams can actually struggle quite a bit in Abyss. So what I'm gonna do here is, I'm gonna run a Burgeon team on each side, and I'm gonna be clearing Abyss with that. I'm gonna be using the Toma team on the first side, and I'll be using Razor team on the second side. The reason why I'm putting the Toma team first side is because we've got Fischl, we've got Yelan, and we're not gonna be circle impacting because Toma can move. And because we're playing against a lot of non-heavy enemies, being able to move a lot is gonna be very helpful for our clear times. Like something like this. I should not have done that. Try to get my burst back. As you can see, right? I was expecting this, obviously, because it's the first chamber, and the first chamber is not very good for circle impact focused teams. But, obviously, we are struggling a little bit more with this.
You still have a special place in my heart.
Zajifke.
We still managed to clear without too much of an issue.
不敬之人，必将得到。
Don't go that way, what the fuck, man?
永不宽恕，抓住你！竟然让地下的荣光降临！
Bruh.
What? Oh my god. I missed. I missed. I fucking missed. This was really poorly played. I'm bad at the video game. It is what it is. I'm so bad at the video game, dude. This one wasn't as good as the first one. Obviously, this dude is very tanky to Dendro damage, and he's also running away from us, so that's not fog. But we still get, like, pretty solid third times. Now, one thing to remember is the Blessing is something that helps Burgeon, Bloom, and Hyper Bloom teams. However, the way that it buffs it is it gives attack to the unit that's triggering your Burgeon or your Hyper Bloom. But, like, giving attack to a unit that has basically no crit rate, no crit damage, and no damage percent doesn't do much. Same thing for Toma. An attack buff on this isn't gonna do that much. And then on top of that, my talents on Toma are basically just not leveled at all. So yes, the Blessing is helping Burgeon and Hyperbloom teams, but the damage increase from the Blessing is honestly less than basically any other Blessing would have been before. It's not a significant Blessing. I'd say that as a general rule, Burgeon teams are actually pretty solid. They are somewhat limited by our current Dendro units, as are basically all of the other Dendro teams, but they do function pretty well, and they're definitely a lot better than people seem to think they are when you use Electro units. Again, you can play Burgeon teams that don't have Electro units, and some of them can perform okay. Generally, they're not, or their performance isn't really coming from the Burgeon doing much, it's just the unit's baseline being pretty good. So if you want to be in a team where your Burgeon is actually doing a significant amount, you're playing a Burgeon team that's actually meant to be a Burgeon team, then I would generally try to stick with versions of Burgeon teams that use an Electro unit. So the specific Electro you use can actually depend based on the situation. As a general rule, you want an Electro unit that will not be hitting the seeds too much, because if they hit the seeds, then your Pyro unit isn't getting Burgeon, and if your Pyro unit isn't getting Burgeon, then why are you putting a Pyro unit in your team? And generally, the best units for that are going to be Fischl and Beidou. Fischl will still sometimes trigger the seeds, but it won't trigger it too consistently. Beidou will never trigger the seeds other than with her E and with the initial cast of her burst, but like the bounces will never ever hit the seeds. But Beidou bounces don't work in AoE, in single target, sorry. And if you're not bouncing, then you're not using the Electro trick to get more seeds. And so when you're in single target, even though Beidou doesn't trigger the seeds, well, Beidou also prevents you from generating as many seeds as you'd otherwise want, which means that it's not actually just strictly better. And generally in single target, I'd rather run Fischl, and in AoE, I'd rather run Beidou. But if you're gonna have one team that changes based on the or one team that you use in every situation, Fischl is generally better than Beidou. So I think that's gonna do it for the video. Closing thoughts, Burgeon isn't like broken. Burgeon has its fair share of issues, but it is definitely better than I've seen people give it credit for. Obviously, maybe you already thought Burgeon was good, in which case, well, cool. Or maybe you thought Burgeon was broken, in which case, you might be overestimating it a little bit. But Burgeon does have its advantages, and it is definitely a pretty solid reaction. It's never anything crazy, but it is actually relatively good. When you end up playing Burgeon carries, you want to build them full EM, and when you're building them full EM, more transformative reactions is always better. But yeah, if you have a Toma, if you have a, I don't know, C6 Bennett, if you have another one of the like teams we looked at earlier, give it a shot. It's actually pretty fun. But I don't want you to expect it to be broken and like spend a lot of resources on your units because you saw, oh wow, so Jeff managed to clear both sides of Abyss with a Burgeon team. Yeah, I can clear both sides of Abyss with basically any archetypes. It's not like, it doesn't mean it's broken. I was basically just showing that it can still be like pretty solid, and there's multiple different ways of making Burgeon teams that are pretty solid, but generally they revolve around Electro. But yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed your stay, and I'll see you guys around. Bye, YouTube. Did he just hyper bloom them with his breath attack? I'm molding.